Chapter 3 of the Bobbsey Twins on the Deep Blue Sea by Laura Lee Hope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Strange News. Bert and Nan Bobbsey looked at one another. They were a little older than Flossie and Freddie, and they saw that something must have happened to make their father come home from the lumber office so early, for on most days he did not come until dinner time. And here it was scarcely 11 o'clock yet, and Dinah was only getting ready to cook the dinner. "Is it bad news?" asked Mrs. Bobbsey of her husband. "Well, part of it is bad," he said, "but no one is hurt or killed or anything like that." "Tell us now," begged Bert. "Tell us the strange news, Daddy." "Oh, I couldn't think of it while you look the way you do," said Mr. Bobbsey. "First get washed nice and clean and put on dry clothes. Then you'll be ready for the news." "I'll hurry," promised Bert, as he ran toward the house, followed by Snap, the trick dog that had once been in a circus. Snap had come out of the barn, where he stayed a good part of the time. He wanted to see what all the noise was about when Bert had called, as he found himself stuck in the mud. "Are you sure no one is hurt?" asked Mrs. Bobbsey of her husband. "Are Uncle Daniel and Aunt Sarah all right?" "Oh, yes, of course." "And Uncle William and Aunt Emily?" "Yes, they're all right, too. My news is about my cousin, Jasper Dent. You don't know him very well, but I did when I was a boy," went on Mr. Bobbsey. "There is a little bad news about him. He has been hurt, and is now ill in a hospital, but he is getting well." "And is the strange news about him?" asked Mrs. Bobbsey, as she walked on with Flossie, Freddie and Nan following. "Yes, about Cousin Jasper," replied Mr. Bobbsey. "But don't get worried, even if we should have to go on a voyage." "On a voyage!" cried Mrs. Bobbsey in surprise. "Yes," and Mr. Bobbsey smiled. "Do you mean in a real ship, like we played our raft was?" asked Freddie. "Yes, my little fireman," laughed Mr. Bobbsey, catching the little barefooted boy up in his arms. Often Freddie was called "Little Fireman," for he had a toy fire engine, and he was very fond of squirting water through the hose fastened to it, a real hose that sprinkled real water. Freddie was very fond of playing he was a fireman. "And will the ship go on the ocean?" asked Flossie. "Yes, my little fat fairy," her father replied, as he caught her up and kissed her in turn. "If your mother thinks we ought to, after I tell the strange news about Cousin Jasper, we may all take a trip on the Deep Blue Sea." "Oh, what fun!" cried Freddie. "I hope we can go soon," murmured Nan. "But Bert mustn't get off the ship to push it, must he, Daddy?" asked Flossie. "No, indeed," laughed her father, as he set her down in the grass. "If he does the water will come up more than above his knees. But now please don't ask me any more questions until I can sit down after dinner and tell you the whole story." The children thought the dinner never would be finished, and Bert, who had put on dry clothes, tried to hurry through with his food. "Bert, my dear, you must not eat so fast," remonstrated his mother as she saw him hurrying. "Bert is eating like a regular steam engine," came from Flossie. At this Nan burst out laughing. "Flossie, did you ever see an engine eat?" she asked. "Well, I don't care. You know what I mean," returned the little girl. "'Course engines eat!" cried Freddie. "Don't they eat piles of coal?" he went on triumphantly. "Well, not an auto engine," said Nan. "Yes, that eats up gasoline," said Bert. But they were all in a hurry to listen to what their father might have to say, and so wasted no further time in argument. And when the rice pudding was brought in, Nan said: "Dinner is over now, Daddy, for this is the dessert. And when you're in a hurry to go back to the office you don't wait for that. So can't we hear the strange news now?" "Yes, I guess so," answered her father, and he drew from his pocket a letter. "This came this morning," he said, "and I thought it best to come right home and tell you about it," he said to his wife. "The letter is from my cousin Jasper. When we were boys we lived in the same town. Jasper was always fond of the ocean, and often said when he grew up he would make a long voyage. "Freddie and I were having a voyage on a raft to day," said Flossie, "and we had fun until Bert fell in." "I didn't fall in. I jumped in and I got stuck in the mud," put in Bert. "Don't interrupt, dears, if you want to hear Daddy's news," said Mrs. Bobbsey, and her husband, after looking at the letter, as if to make sure about what he was talking, went on. "Cousin Jasper Dent did become a sailor when he grew up, but he sailed more on steamboats than on ships with sails that have to be blown by the wind. Many things happened to him, so he has told me in letters he has written, for I have not seen him very often of late years. And now the strangest of all has happened, so he tells me here." "What is it?" asked Mrs. Bobbsey. "Well, he has been shipwrecked, for one thing." "And was he cast away on a desert island like Robinson Crusoe?" asked Bert, who was old enough to read that wonderful book. "Well, that's what I don't know," went on Mr. Bobbsey. "Cousin Jasper does not write all that happened to him. He says he has been shipwrecked and has had many adventures, and he wants me to come to him so that he may tell me more." "Where is he?" asked Mrs. Bobbsey. "In a hospital in St. Augustine, Florida," was the answer. "Oh, Florida!" exclaimed Flossie. "That's where the cocoanuts grow, isn't it, Daddy?" "Well, maybe a few grow there, but I guess you are thinking of oranges," her father answered with a smile. "Lots of oranges grow in Florida." "Are we going there?" asked Bert. "That's what I want to talk to your mother about," went on Mr. Bobbsey. "Cousin Jasper doesn't say just what happened to him, nor why he is so anxious to see me, but he wants me to come down to Florida to see him." "It would be a nice trip if we could go, and take the children," said Mrs. Bobbsey. "Though I suppose this is hardly the time of the year to go to such a place." "Oh, it is always nice in Florida," her husband said. "Though of course when it is winter here it seems nicer there because it is so warm, and the flowers are in blossom." "And do the oranges grow then?" asked Freddie. "I guess so," his father said. "At any rate, it is now early spring here, and even in Florida, where it is warmer than it is up north where we live, I think it will not be too hot for us. Besides, I don't believe Cousin Jasper intends to stay in Florida, or have us stay there." "Why not?" Mrs. Bobbsey asked. "Well, in his letter he says, after he has told me the strange news, he hopes I will go on a voyage with him, to search for some one who is lost." "Some one lost?" replied Nan. "What does he mean, Daddy?" "That's what I don't know. I guess Cousin Jasper was too ill to write all he wanted to, and he would rather see me and tell me. So I came to ask if you would like to go to Florida," and Mr. Bobbsey looked at his wife and smiled. "Oh, yes, let's go!" begged Bert. "And pick oranges," added Flossie. "Please say you'll go, Mother!" cried Nan. "Please do!" "I want to go in a big steamboat!" fairly shouted Freddie. "And I'll take my fire engine with me and put out the fire." "Oh, children dear, do be quiet one little minute and let me think," begged Mrs. Bobbsey. "Let me see the letter, dear," she said to her husband. Mr. Bobbsey handed his wife the sheets of paper, and she read them carefully. "Well, they don't tell very much," she said, as she folded them and handed them back. "Your cousin does say something strange happened when he was shipwrecked, wherever that was. I think you had better go and see him, if you can leave the lumber yard, Dick." "Oh, yes, the lumber business will be all right," said Mr. Bobbsey, whom his wife called Dick. "And would you like to go with me?" he asked his wife. "And take the children?" "Yes, we could take them. A sail on the ocean would do them good, I think. They have been shut up pretty much all winter." "Will we go on a sailboat?" asked Bert. "No, I hardly think so. They are too slow. If we go we will very likely go on a steamer," Mr. Bobbsey said. "Oh, goody!" cried Freddie. while Mrs. Bobbsey smiled her consent. "Well, then, I'll call it settled," went on the twins' father, "and I'll write Cousin Jasper that we're coming to hear his strange news. Though why he couldn't put it in his letter I can't see. But maybe he had a good reason. Now I'll go back to the office and see about getting ready for a trip on the deep blue sea. And I wonder—" Just then, out in the yard, a loud noise sounded. Snap, the big dog, could be heard barking, and a child's voice cried: "No, you can't have it! You can't have it! Oh, Nan! Bert! Make your dog go 'way!" Mr. Bobbsey, pushing back his chair so hard that it fell over, rushed from the room. Chapter 4